Voice family.
Are you on Getter yet? No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored.
And it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
That's right. You can follow all of your favorites. Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec.
And so many more.
And the best part?
You can watch Real America's Voice right there on Getter.
Live.
So join the conversation.
Hop on the Getter chat room.
Engage with patriots who are just like you.
Good morning, Getter friends.
We're breaking news, we're delivering the truth,
And we're doing it on Getter
Every single day. So don't wait. Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
It isn't just an app. It isn't just a social media platform. It's a community. Good evening, America. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C. and the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. You know about this. Wired to Fish Coffee is the official coffee of Just the News, and you can go right now to WiredToFishCoffee.com. That's Wired, the number 2, fishcoffee.com, and get a fantastic 10% discount on all of their great tasting coffees and these new mugs. If you guys have pulled the camera back on me, check these out, guys. We've got a Just the News mug, my old-fashioned pewter mug. Go check them out. They're amazing. You get 10% off if you use the promo code Just News. All right, now to news. One day after the Supreme Court struck down a federal judge's order preventing Donald Trump from deporting illegal alien gang members, the president and his administration significantly turned up the pressure on the millions of illegal immigrants still remaining in this country. In addition to resuming deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, that was what was in the middle of that court case, the administration announced today it was revoking the legal status of nearly 1 million migrants who came into the country through the concierge-style Biden-created CBP One app. That order puts those migrants in immediate danger of being deported, arrested, or fined. And what do you mean by fined? Well, today the administration also announced it will begin enforcing a 1990s-era law that empowers the government to fine an illegal immigrant who stays in the country up to $981 a day. Oh. And while those things, that's a big number. By the way, I think it's $998 actually. I actually looked up the law. It's actually a little higher. And while those two things put the carrot and stick approach to illegal aliens still in the country, the Trump administration revealed today it's going to seek more than $45 billion to build more detention facilities and more deportation capabilities to speed the exit of those who have crossed our borders illegally. In other words, the administration didn't waste any time taking advantage of the Supreme Court smackdown of Judge Boasberg. And let's stay in the courts for a second more. While President Trump has been winning a lot of his appeals, he just lost the case. A few minutes ago in district court here in Washington. That ruling actually came from a judge he appointed. U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden ruled just minutes ago that the Associated Press and its reporters must be restored to White House access, including the Oval Office, and that President Trump's decision to ban them from the White House grounds because they would not call the Gulf of America by its real name amounted to unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination. In other words, the AP's defiance was protected by the First Amendment, and they couldn't be punished on a federal property. Now, expect that administration to appeal that one quickly. Man, I'm going to bring you in now. There's one other thing I want to mention. Terrible tragedy in the Dominican Republic overnight. More than 50 people dead, including a Major League Baseball star who starred in a World Series and a governor of that country. A roof collapsed in a nightclub. Terrible tragedy there. Many more victims still being uncovered. But Octavio Dotel, a great pitcher, played in the World Series, died in that roof collapse.
Yeah, absolutely heartbreaking. And John, I want to go to some other night items in the news. The president held an event shortly before our show tonight celebrating the signing of his Unleashing American Energy executive order, which focuses on America's coal industry to help generate much more energy here in America. And here is some of what President Trump had to say about it just before signing the order.
The value of untapped coal in our country is 100 times greater than the value of all the gold at Fort Knox, and we're going to unleash it and make America rich and powerful again. Under this order, I'm also directing Secretary Wright to use billions of dollars in federal funding to invest in the next generation of coal technology, which is an amazing technology in terms of getting the full potential of coal and also doing it a very clean, environmental way.
The value of untapped coal in the U.S. is 100 times greater than the value of all the gold at Fort Knox. I have not heard that statistic before, and probably many of you have not either. All right, the order also acknowledges the end of a moratorium put in place during the Obama administration that paused coal leasings on federal land. John, that's some pretty big news, right?
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Quick programming note. It's possible at the late end of the show that President Trump is going to start an event at the National Republican Campaign Committee. He'll be speaking. If that happens, we're going to go live there, so we'll cut in when that happens. But until then, we had a perfect guest to kick off the show today. He's the Attorney General on the front lines of a lot of these issues involving wayward judges and, of course, the immigration battle. South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson. Take a listen to our interview. All right, joining us now, a man who's been on the front lines of the battle for immigration and getting sanity back in the federal courts. And just a week ago, he predicted what happened last night. The Supreme Court overturning Judge Boasberg on the case involving those illegal alien criminal gang members. Joining us now from the great state of South Carolina, it's Attorney General Alan Wilson. General Wilson, good to have you back, sir.
It's great to be back. Thank you for having me.
All right, so I think you saw this one coming. You figured that John Roberts and the court would clip the wings of Judge Boasberg. He was way over his skis. Your thoughts about the ruling, and also what message it sends to other judges who are thinking about overreaching right now?
Well, I think it sends a very clear message. I mean, the courts are starting to, the district courts, the lower courts are starting to get out in front of their skis, as you just said. And this is something that I believe last week when the judge made the ruling that he made. The Supreme Court gave the Trump administration a qualified victory, meaning they didn't go to the merits of whether the Trump administration could enforce the Alien Enemies Act, but they basically said that to the plaintiffs, you brought the wrong claims in the wrong jurisdiction. They should have brought them in Texas. I believe the reason that they brought these claims before this particular judge is because they wanted a particular outcome. That's why they didn't go to the state of Texas. The Supreme Court basically kind of slapped them on the hands and basically admonished the court and by ruling the way that they did, and that's why we have the ruling that we got. So I'm incredibly proud of the Supreme Court in a very split decision. You had obviously 5 conservatives on one side, you had Amy Coney Barrett and more liberal members of the court on the other side. But basically they're telling these judges, you can't overreach the way this judge did. You have to go down to the jurisdiction where the alleged unlawful detention occurred, and you have to bring the right claims there, which they didn't.
Sir, I know that all of these cases that Democrats have against President Trump and his administration and executive orders, it's going to be a case-by-case basis as far as how the Supreme Court rules if it ultimately ends up there. But does the speed with which they took this up and ruled on it indicate to you that for any future cases, any future run-ins that the president has with Democrats or Democrat state AGs, that they will use that same speed?
I mean, I certainly think it signals that. I mean, I've read some of the dissents of Justice Thomas, who has actually been lamenting that some of these district court judges that are engaging in nationwide injunctions is starting to rankle some of members of the court, as Justice Thomas said in one of his opinions a couple of years ago. I think other members of the court probably feel the same. I don't want to speak for them, but when you read how they're writing, they're starting to get a little annoyed by the lower courts. And so I think that's what you're seeing. Also, you got to remember that the President of the United States has a lot of discretion when engaging in foreign affairs and national security. The courts have upheld that over generations, that the president has that Article II constitutional authority. And when you see judges, Article III courts with statutory authority, not the constitutional authority that the Supreme Court has, weighing in and trying to strip the president of these powers, you're going to see a more aggressive Supreme Court basically say you need to stay in your lane. There's a right way to do these things and there's a wrong way. They did it the wrong way.
So when you look in the ruling, there's 2 really stark things. They remind the Judge Boasberg, who's been around a long time, even ran the FISA court, hey, we ruled in 1948 that there's no judicial review except a habeas corpus petition, but you seem to ignore that. And then 2, you knew these guys belonged in a Texas court because they're held in detention in Texas. The fact that the judge had to be reminded of a basic jurisdictional issue, and the fact that the Supreme Court ruled on this issue in 1948 when a judge can intervene, which is on narrow grounds. Do you think that was intentional, that they wanted him and others like him to realize they're going to get called out in the future?
Yeah, who knows? But you just danced on this issue right now. The habeas action, which someone brings when they've been unlawfully or unconstitutionally detained, is the appropriate claim to bring, but you can only bring that in the jurisdiction where the detention occurred. They dropped that claim, okay, and they went to the D.C. District Court for this particular judge. I believe that they wanted a particular outcome. This is basically judge shopping. They got the judge they wanted. They got the outcome they wanted, and the Supreme Court said, not so fast, and slapped them on the hand. And I'm glad that the court did that, or the Supreme Court did that, and if they'll continue to do that, we can probably get better rulings from district court judges in the future.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
Sir, on that jurisdiction issue, because there are a lot of folks out there who say that the inferior courts, these injunctions, these stays, these TROs should only be within that district, only the participating parties. Maybe it should have always been like that. But is that the remedy at this point?
Well, that is what the Supreme Court has suggested. Some of the members, as I said, Clarence Thomas has even talked about this in some of his previous dissents. And so that could be the remedy going forward. Again, I don't want to speak for the court. I'm loath to do that, but that seems to be where they might be headed. We'll see.
Yeah, really interesting. Sir, while this debate is played out, we're reminded almost daily of the danger that criminal illegal aliens pose in the country, particularly those who are bad actors. You had a tragic case, a hit and run with an illegal immigrant. It took the life of a student. Tell us about that and why you personally are going to make sure you prosecute that case yourself.
Well, first off, that tragic accident, that tragic, fatality, traffic accident happened 2 blocks that way from my office. It literally right up the street from us. We passed the flowers and the monument memorial to that young man. So our thoughts and prayers go out to that family and that community of people, for what they're going through right now. It is, as a father of 2 teenagers, it's just gut-wrenching. But my reasons for taking this case were very specific, and we sent a letter to the local prosecutor who was very cooperative with us and local law enforcement. Our office is involved in ongoing broad investigations dealing with illegal immigration, and because of the unique situation with this case, we thought it would be appropriate for us to wrap this case up and handle this case. Our office is taking a very strong position on combating illegal immigration in a number of ways. First off, a lot of the fentanyl trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking that's coming into South Carolina, as well as all of our other states in the interior of the United States, is coming from south of the Mexican border, or the Texas-Mexico border. It's a lot of cartel activity, a lot of fentanyl. In the last 4 years, we've seized over 144 kilos of fentanyl. Half a kilo is enough to kill 500,000 people. That's a lot of stuff coming into our state. And so you look at that, and you look at the fact that local law enforcement has been prohibited by the former administration from engaging in ICE functions, and now we have an administration that's supporting local law enforcement. My goal is to do everything I can to get every single law enforcement agency in this state deputized to help carry out some of the ICE functions so that we can go after these illicit narcotics trafficking. Working with our federal partners and our local partners, we can make our streets and communities safer here in South Carolina. That is why I'm taking an aggressive position on illegal immigration here in South Carolina.
So important.
Yeah. It's really important, and I think it's going to create a stark difference between red states and blue states that will be very hard to ignore for people who formerly supported sanctuary cities. Sir, during the Biden administration, we often had you on to discuss cases against the Biden administration's actions. It's a bit of a different story now with President Trump in the Oval Office, but I know your days are still very busy. Tell us about some of the cases coming down the pike for you.
Well, listen, everything that we're doing is in basically protecting or defending the president's agenda because it's under constant attack. Obviously, one of the most recent things we were involved in, and you've had me here to talk about this, is birthright citizenship. That executive order was one that was pretty important to me. That was, as you know, the 14th Amendment has been, I think, incorrectly misapplied over the last several decades, or the last 100 years or so, and it's something that I'm very interested in, because I don't think someone should be able to come here as an illegal alien, have a child, and then anchor themselves to this country forevermore. That's not what the 14th Amendment was intended to do. That's what the president's executive order directed the government to interpret the 14th Amendment under different application, and we're going to support that. That is a big one for me. Obviously, we're involved in a lot of other things involving DEI and other things that the president is putting out there, and we're going to going to support those initiatives as well. But again, at the end of the day, the most important job I have is to protect the citizens of South Carolina and to promote public health and public safety in this state, and that is something that I am very serious. And if you are an illegal alien, especially if you are a member of Tren de Aragua or MS-13, we are coming for you, and we're going to get you out of our state, and we're going to make our state safer.
Yeah, I think your message has been clear, unequivocal, and loud, and that's what probably the country needs right now, is people speaking as clearly as you. One last question for you, sir. There is a man that was in the country for quite some time. He was clearly facilitated, harbored, cared for before he killed this college student with his car. Can you tell us whether there's any consideration that anyone who was in the chain of allowing him to stay here for the last several months or years could potentially be prosecuted as for harboring him or aiding him or giving him money? Are you looking downstream from the man himself?
So I'm not privy to all the specific facts of this particular case, but yes, it is a federal crime to harbor illegal aliens in this country. That is something that Tom Homan has spoken openly about, and it's something that we would be willing to work with our federal partners on if they ask us to. But that is something that is a federal crime, and you can be prosecuted for it.
Great. Well, sir, as always, we're always watching South Carolina. You're on the front lines of some of the most important legal battles and on the winning side of a lot of them as well. It's always a great honor to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. What a great interview. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Congressman Mike Kennedy will be here to discuss what he's doing to help make America healthy again. He's doing he's on the front lines of it. Fun discussion right after these messages. Hey, folks, did you know scammers can literally steal your home right out from under you? The FBI calls it house stealing, and it's a growing real estate scam targeting American homeowners. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee, and file it with your local recorder's office. And just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they can take out loans using your equity as collateral or even sell the property behind your back, and you won't even know it's happening until you start getting collections or foreclosure notices months later. So let me ask you, when was the last time you checked your home title lock? If you're like me, the answer is never. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. That's why I trust Home Title Lock. Their $1 million triple lock protection helps keep your homes and equity safe. Here's what you get. Immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property, urgent alerts if there are any changes, and if fraud should ever happen, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost to you. And here's the best part. I've teamed up with Home Title Lock to give you a free title history report so you can find out if you're already a victim and access to your personal title expert. A $250 value just for signing up. So do this. Go to HometitleLock.com and use my promo code JTN250. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN250 to get the protection and peace of mind you deserve.
Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. RFK Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again movement is picking up steam across the country, especially among Republicans on Capitol Hill. They are looking at all sorts of ways to change the health of our nation for the better. So joining us now to discuss what he is doing about that, along with the rest of the legislative agenda in the House this week, Utah Congressman Mike Kennedy. Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me today.
Sir, I absolutely want to get into your Healthy Lunch for Healthy Kids Act. I think that is so incredibly important, but I want to start with something out of your state of Utah. This is one of those instances of states being laboratories of democracy, you guys getting rid of fluoride in the water. I have a feeling that Utah is going to start a brush fire across this country. How much does that mean to people like you who are very concerned about the health of Utahns?
I'm a big fan of those laboratories of democracy. I was in the state legislature for a decade, and I think in the state legislatures as well as in our communities, we can solve a lot of problems. And in this case, the state legislature in the state of Utah has made a statement. They want to let people use fluoride. If they want to go get it themselves, they can get it over the counter. And in this case, why is it that the state government needs to, or cities and counties need to fluoridate the water? People can do that themselves. And so, big fan of autonomy and people taking charge of their own health care. And in this case, the state of Utah has made a statement, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of states around the country that are going to replicate this.
Yeah, and Bobby Kennedy himself saying this week he's going to tell the CDC to back off the mandate that the CDC has tried to impose on states for a long time. So a lot of progress. I want to turn to that very important legislation that you've done, because this is, I think, one of the epic moments in education. You have a real plan to make school lunches a lot healthier. Tell us about it.
They should have been healthy since the very beginning. I don't know if you ever were part of the school lunch program, but I was. I received a free school lunch when I was a kid from 7th grade through 12th grade. And the reality is these lunches need to be a model of health. Now, one of the problems that we have is kids won't eat what healthy food is given to them, and so they throw a lot of that away. And part of that is just because does a child even know how to peel an orange anymore unless it's given to them in an orange candy of some sort? So we need to actually exemplify healthy behaviors in our school systems. And frankly, if a child or the family doesn't want to eat healthy, then just bring your own lunch or buy your own items that you might want to bring. But if the state taxpayer or the federal taxpayer is going to pay for it, let's make sure it's a good, healthy, well-rounded nutritional diet for these children to eat.
I love that. I want to get into the details of that, because you see so many processed foods on those ceramic lunch trays, those things that feel like you could beat someone over the head with them and knock them out cold. What exactly are you replacing? Is it going to have to be whole fruits and veggies, one portion of protein? Have you guys laid out exactly what it has to be?
We have not. It's not dictated that way. We've just said that ultra processed foods in the NOVA classification scheme can't be used, and that includes, and I've got a list of them here: potassium bromate, propylparaben, titanium dioxide, brominated vegetable oil, blah, blah, blah. I mean, can you even spell these things, let alone say them? And the answer is, why are these things in our school lunches? And if they are, and they are, let's get them out of there. Titanium dioxide doesn't sound like a good nutritional supplement. So this only eliminates the ultra processing of foods that are associated with school lunches. Other than that, we're not dictating what people have to eat. And like I said, this is for the school lunch program. If you don't like it, just bring your own lunch or go buy something else. But when the taxpayers are paying for this, which the federal taxpayer does pay for this, it should be a healthy option, not something that's going to be questionable as to the health of our children. Many of these things you both know, many of your listeners know, the European Union has already banned many of these items, and in that case, red number 5 is banned in our cosmetics, but not in our food. If it's bad to put on your skin, maybe it should be bad to put in your mouth.
That's such a great point. Is it just so common sense? You said something profound before, and I think that it's the key to what you're about to do. You almost have to change the culture in order to change the diet, and it seems to me that what you're doing, what Bobby Kennedy's doing, what President Trump is trying to do is make it fashionable and cultural to realize you can have good, delicious food that isn't bad for your health. Talk a little bit about what ingredients are going to go into that cultural change.
The ingredients involve first an introduction, and in this case, we're making it so that these school lunches will be healthier. And the nice thing about that, and that's where I'll go to my local school lunch ladies and sometimes men, is that these are good people, and they want to serve the children healthy items. They've got a bunch of regulations and constraints, and so this is actually going to put in an option for them to exercise what they know they should do anyways, and that's provide healthy options. And from there, their creativity associated with the function of making food, they can start to utilize that and find healthy options that the children can eat instead of just opening up a can of ultra-processed food and dumping it into a pot, heating it up and giving it to the children. So there are many options available for people here, but it's a really interesting consideration that if people find that whole fruits and vegetables and whole grains are going to be a concern to them, then they can actually go elsewhere to find those things that are ultra processed. But when we set an example and people have that option, I think we may find more and more that children and their families are going to start moving in a better direction. And that can help us, and I'm a family doctor professionally before I came to Congress. It can help us with our obesity epidemic. It can help us with our diabetes epidemic. It can help us ultimately with these children who aren't going to develop osteoarthritis in their backs and their knees and their hips because they're carrying extra weight that they don't need because they drink chocolate milk and eat hot dogs and bologna all the time. These are items that we should avoid, and our school lunches should be a model for our health instead of a dystopian universe full of ultra-processed foods that have titanium dioxide and things like that in them.
Yeah, that's just unbelievable. You read these ingredients that, like you said, you can't even pronounce, and it's like, why are we putting this in our body? I would think that if you were going to ban ultra-processed foods from school lunches, which I think is tremendously helpful in moving the entire country more in a healthy direction, there should also be a pretty substantial amount of support for removing ultra-processed foods from food stamp programs. I know there's already a bill on, I believe, in the House supporting such. Don't those things go hand in hand?
SNAP benefits, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is what the food stamp program is colloquially called. And the reality is, and we've opened bill files to enhance the health of that. In fact, Utah has also led the way on that as well with a friend of mine, Representative Chevrier, who's asked for a waiver such that if you're going to receive SNAP benefits, then they're not going to be able to be buying soda, which is the #1 purchase from SNAP benefits, as well as ultra-processed candy type items with those. In addition, I've authored a bill and I've put it on the floor for us that if you're going to get SNAP benefits, if you're able-bodied, you should work for those benefits. And working as well as avoiding ultra-processed foods are just good policies. And we're not telling everybody they have to do any of these things, but if you're going to receive taxpayer funding support in the form of federal taxpayers supporting this, then we should set an example for you should get a job if you're going to be able to work for your SNAP benefits, and let's not buy soda and candy bars with your federal taxpayer supported SNAP benefits.
Yeah, I think that's probably wildly popular with the American taxpayer.
It just sounds like common sense to me. I mean, these are just things that I think most taxpayers are going to agree with. Some will protest and be concerned about, but these are just common sense approaches that we need to bring more common sense back to Washington, D.C., and myself and many others around here are trying to do that.
That's a great point. Common sense is the key word. There's no doubt about it. Real quick, I want to turn to the work at hand this week inside the Congress. Two important things: getting the Senate budget resolution resolved one way or the other in the House, and then getting citizenship checks for people who want to register to vote. Talk about the prospects for both in this Common Sense Week in Washington.
I think there's a good chance, and Speaker Johnson is working diligently to bring together the caucus. There are many concerns that the House members are expressing with the Senate resolution that they're not being serious with the savings that we're all pursuing. The difference for those of you that may not be aware is we passed a resolution to save $1.5 trillion, which is a serious piece of money. The Senate passed a resolution to save $4 billion, which is still real money. But in Washington, D.C., that's fairly nominal compared to $1.5 trillion. So we heard in our conference this morning a number of people, myself included, that are concerned that the Senate is not serious about potentially executing on some of these necessary savings that we need for our massive deficit. So with that concern, I'm hopeful that the Speaker and President Thune on the Senate side and President Trump, of course, in the White House, that we can drive a consensus amongst people who want to do the right thing but have different ways of achieving that. And I believe that we can do that. I'm an optimist. I came here to Washington to actually make a difference and work in a positive way with people, as reflected by my healthy school lunch efforts, as well as, in this case, deficit reduction. And I think we can get together. Let's cross our fingers that we can bring everybody together to move this resolution forward.
Yeah.
Great idea.
We've talked to a number of members of Congress who, like you, are champing at the bit to get back to the business of the people. And the people appreciate it. I assure you of that. Congressman Mike Kennedy from the great state of Utah, thanks for joining us tonight. And thanks for what you're doing to make America healthier.
Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. And on the other side of these messages, the markets rebounded earlier today before ending a little bit in the red. Was the president right when he told people not to be panicans over his new tariff policy? We're going to talk about that next.
Hey folks, did you know that other seniors group, AARP, has promoted Drag Queen Story Hour events? Really, it's true. And it's just one example of their steady shift towards a progressive political agenda. They supported Obamacare, opposed the Trump tax cuts, and they continue to align with policies that many everyday Americans simply don't agree with. That's why more and more people are turning to AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. It's a conservative alternative to AARP. AMAC is working hard to protect Social Security, fight for election integrity, and promote the constitutional and common sense values that matter to you and me. And it's not just for seniors. Anyone can join regardless of age. Right now, AMAC is offering an exclusive deal, a 5-year membership. That's what I am. I've joined for 5 years for just $31. That's 47% off the regular rate of $60. But this special offer ends April 30th. So hurry up, go check it out. Your dues don't go to woke causes. They go towards supporting AMAC's advocacy work in Washington and across the country. To learn more and join today, visit amac.us/justnews. That's AMAC, AMAC.us/justnews. Welcome back, America. We're going to turn to our next guest in a second, but a little breaking news. Senator Johnson, Senator Grassley just sent this to me a little bit ago while we're on air. It's a major development. You're taking a look at a letter right there that was just sent to the FBI Director Kash Patel and the Attorney General Pam Bondi. What does it say? It says that Congress has obtained evidence that shows that the Biden White House was directly involved in trying to help start Jack Smith's investigation on the January 6th probe against President Trump. Specifically, that the White House counsel's office secretly obtained President Trump's and Vice President Mike Pence's former phones and giving them to the prosecutors, basically sicking the Justice Department on his future competitor, his future rival in the 2024 election, so that they could look for dirt for possible crimes. There's a lot more coming in. There's a lot of other evidence as well of the White House involvement. Remember, 2 years ago, we were the first news agency, right here, Real America's Voice, Just the News, to report that a White House counsel was directly involved with this investigation. Now, more details, including imagine this, you're the Democrat president and you go get the old Republican's phone for your prior president and send it to the Justice Department. That's what Senators Johnson and Grassley were able to confirm tonight. It's in that letter. Keep an eye on justthenews.com. We're going to get you up to speed on that all throughout the night. A lot more developments. All right, as Amanda promised when we went to break, a lot to talk about the president's extraordinary start to his second term. More than 110 executive orders when you count today's. Joining us now to sort that all out, the Director of Government Affairs and Global Strategies at Nest Point, our good friend Tim Phillips. Tim, good to have you back.
Good to be back, John. Very much so.
All right. So I think a lot of people in the elitist world, the media world, they're all panicked about the tariffs, and they see this as Armageddon economically. But those who know Donald Trump and know that the art of the deal is these tariffs are just a negotiating tactic to get better deals. Give us your referee of what the tariff deals really are going to end up doing for America.
I think already we're seeing governments around the world and businesses around the world coming to Washington to get a deal done because they want continued access to the wealthiest, biggest market in the whole world, and that's the United States of America. So the president is right to work to get a fair deal for the American people. We talked about earlier, John, there's a little turbulence, of course, but sometimes to get the kind of big results an administration needs to see, a country needs to see, there is some turbulence. And I already, some of the work we do at Nest Point, I already see some of our clients on the business side getting to Washington to try to get a deal done, and they're pushing their governments to get their tariffs in line so that they have an even standing with the United States, or so the United States have an even standing with them getting into their markets.
Yeah. And Tim, about a dozen or so countries have officially come forward and I guess pre-cried uncle and said, wait, before this happens, we'll talk. China is not one of them. What do you anticipate is going to happen with China? The press secretary today said they want to negotiate, but they don't know how to start it. What does that sound like to you?
The analysts that study China closely have said for years that they're in trouble, big trouble, the massive debt in their economy, the overbuilding that's happened there, the command and control economy of Xi and the communists. They are in difficult straits, and they need to get a deal done with the United States of America, or they're going to suffer a lot more. They're our biggest geopolitical enemy. I believe that. I think that is the way the Trump administration probably sees things as well. A decade ago, guys, I looked at that and said, we should engage with China and we should keep, not do our tariffs and let China continue to have access to our market. I think I was wrong about that. I know I was. And I think the administration has taken the right approach to be tough on them, to demand an even playing field with China. And so the president is being patient with it. I know they are. They've said they are. And time is on our side, not the communist Chinese side.
That's a great point. And by the way, you're not the only person to come on this show and say that. Newt Gingrich and others have come on the show and said the same thing. We thought that was going to work. It was going to be Perestroika too, but it didn't. It's great that we can recoil now and actually get to a great strategy, Tim. I want to double down on some of the economic news, because while the hysteria and the mayhem in the news media is all about the tariffs, there are continuing signs that the economy is very strong. The jobs report last week way over expectations, showing that employers are still wanting to hire under Trump's economy. And this oil prices are down to a 4-year low, bringing energy prices down. So it would seem to bring all inflation down. Tell us about the fundamentals of the economy, even as we have these scare tactics going on.
Well, the energy side is especially encouraging, and we knew it would be once you got rid of all this nutty climate change regulation that the Biden years saddled us with. Oil's under $75 a barrel. We're going to see gas, I believe, by the summer at under $2 a gallon across this country, at least in the states that don't tax it like crazy at the state level, places like California, et cetera. But the energy is going to lead the way. He's taking steps, the president, to get coal moving again. The regulations nearly destroyed a very proud and important industry, the coal industry in the United States. And the president, his team have taken aggressive efforts, Secretary Wright and others. So energy is going to lead the way. We've got the best farmers in the world. They just need a level playing field. 228,000 jobs. That was an excellent jobs report. It exceeded expectations. And coming next, is the great big beautiful bill. And if they get that done in the House and Senate, need to get it done. That's so important for Republicans in the House and Senate. Get those taxes for the tax cuts from the Trump era extended. Let's get rid of the tax on tips so the service industry is freed up and has more money in their pockets, which they deserve, by the way. That tax bill is right around the corner if Republicans in the House and Senate do their job. And that's going to ignite this economy, I believe, by later on this year.
Tim, before we let you go, one of the nations that I think could pave the way for others is Japan. President Trump had a great relationship with Japan and Shinzo Abe in his first term. Same thing with this second term, one of the first world leaders to come to the White House. Scott Bessent says he's going to help in those negotiations for a trade deal with Japan. How important is that for other nations to look at and say, yeah, that's a good plan?
Yeah. When you look at the model of Japan and the way their relations have been with this administration in this term, and as you noted, the first term, one of our key allies, and they're benefiting from this. And so I think Japan is one of the better models. It's not by accident that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth made one of his very first trips to Japan. They're a crucial ally in the world economically for us and also militarily. And their economy is going to benefit from getting the deal done. And I do think they're setting the gold standard, the right standard for how it's best to operate with the Trump administration. Get in, open up your markets in a fair and free way, and then you're going to get a good deal for the United States, absolutely, but also a good deal for your country.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Tim, I've been in Washington a long time. You're one of the wisest guys I know in the city the whole time I've been here. Really a great honor to have you on the show. We'll bring you back more. We're going to need a lot more of your wisdom over the next 6 months as we navigate this. But good to have you on tonight.
Always good to be with you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. After that, we're going to have a little bit more discussion about how we can win the fight against culture. Culture, that is, remember? We'll have that next right after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. We have a very special guest lined up for this block. But, John, I want to get into a little bit more of what Senator Ron Johnson and Senator Chuck Grassley sent you about Joe Biden as his hand in some of these investigations and these charges into President Trump. He consistently said, I had nothing to do with it.
He had, and not only that, we're now getting a sense that they're securing the phones before the president was even a subject of the investigation. That's one of the things you see in the letter. So they're literally setting it over, hoping that they could find something that would turn the president into a subject. Now, let's remind people what we've been able to document over the last few years. 2 years ago, I broke the story that it was the White House counsel's office that instructed NARA to go call the FBI and sic the FBI and Donald Trump. We got that letter. We broke that story. It became a big story. It was the beginning of the unraveling of the Jack Smith investigation. Now we know that the White House was giving now we know the FBI went and got the phones for President Trump and Mike Pence, which would have a lot of executive privilege information on other things. And now we learned today those phones were handed over by none other than, and with the help of, the Biden White House counsel's office, right? And they're doing this before there's a predicate to really open a full investigation. Now, another thing in the letter is we're seeing that there is a senior, according to this letter, a senior official in the FBI in Washington, a guy named Thibault. A lot of people remember him. And what this letter says is that he was pushing to open a full investigation of President Trump when his staff and the experts around him thought there was not enough evidence to warrant a full investigation. It was simply a preliminary investigation. What does it show? It gets right to the thing that Alan Dershowitz talks about all the time. This was a get Trump operation.
Absolutely.
Get Trump, we'll find the evidence later, just get something going. That's what they did in Russia collusion. Yep. That's what they did in Ukraine impeachment. Now we know that everything about Ukraine impeachment was wrong, validated. Yep. And this is what they did on January 6th to open the electors' investigation against him. This is really significant stuff. My colleague, Stephen Richards, is pulling together a really good story. We'll have it up on Just the News in a while, but you got it first here because the senator sent me the stuff right as we were sitting on air. So how lucky do we get? All right, I think we're ready to turn to our guest, right?
Indeed,
right,
yes. Joining us now is the co-host of the podcast Erased, which just had its debut episode yesterday. The podcast seeks to highlight people who have been silenced due to cancel culture. It's Leila Centner. Leila, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. You just debuted your new podcast. I got to say, plenty of subject matter when it comes to people getting canceled. Tell us about it.
So it's all about that. I don't know if you remember, I was the school owner at the time who spoke out against the COVID shots. And I basically, the media tried to cancel me, shut me down from here all the way to Russia, Egypt. I mean, it was really, really a serious case of, you don't agree with what we're saying, we're going to cancel you. And through that journey, my husband and I realized we really didn't feel like we had a voice. And so what our platform Erase does is give people a voice who have been canceled, or they've tried to cancel, or they were completely canceled, to basically share their side of the story. And, you know, the Erase is amazing because we've got tears that are shedded. People are really becoming raw and emotional and just being honest about what is happening to them. I think the media doesn't realize sometimes the lies that they spew, the one-sided story that they tell is hurtful, and it's destroyed many lives. It's caused, you know, for example, Roger Stone comes on and tells us about how it wiped him out and he couldn't even afford to pay for his wife's medical bills. Like, these are serious things that people feel stifled and they don't have anywhere to go. And now at Erase, they have a place to go.
Yeah. Leila, you had a really fun first guest on the podcast, which I think you host with your husband, correct?
Roger Stone?
No, Alan Dershowitz was your first one, right?
Yes, we had Alan Dershowitz on and he was a great interview, and it was really to see how, you know, somebody who was, you know, admired in a certain community that he had been living for many, many years, how he went from, you know, this guy that everybody had on a pedestal to, you know, people turning the back, not even opening the door on him, somebody as intelligent and well-spoken and articulate, all because what? He's defending somebody's constitutional right. He's defending somebody who was a president of our country. I mean, you know, it really makes no sense. And if they can do it to Alan, they can do it to anybody. If they can do it to President Trump, they can do it to absolutely anybody. So we want everybody to have a voice to share their side of the story.
Yeah, and he emphasized over and over that this was about supporting and defending the Constitution, not necessarily the person who was involved in the case, who at the time was Donald Trump. I want to ask you about the war on free speech on college campuses. We have seen this. I mean, this is endured since, I guess, the last 50 years or so, but it has really ramped up in the last year. What are your thoughts on President Trump and the things that he has done to try to abate that?
I love it. I love what he's doing for free speech. I love all of the things that he's doing, even with the tariffs. I really feel like everybody needs to just be patient, because he's not just, throwing mud at the wall. He's very calculated. He's very strategic. He has a lot of very bright minds around him that are helping him with a lot of the things that he has in motion right now. And I really feel like he's got a team of Avengers that are out there doing what we need to do to take back our country and take back our power. And he really is focused on the middle class. If you think about all these amazing factory jobs that were here and are now gone because tariffs are put on us and not any other country, it just makes logical sense what he's doing. We just need to be patient and give him time, instead of, the mass hysteria, which is causing the markets to crash right now.
Yeah. Leila Centner, co-host along with her husband, David, of the podcast Erase Everybody. Go check it out. Leila, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. President Trump signed an executive order to unleash American energy today. So what does it do, and why are the climate activists so upset about it? You can probably predict it. We'll be with that after the break. Welcome back to our final segment of the evening. President Trump took a big step to unleash American energy today, signing an executive order to boost coal mining here in the United States. And do you know who isn't happy about it? Climate activists. And with us to discuss more about that is Climate Depot publisher and former senior staff at the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, Mark Morano. Mark, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks, Jeff.
I'm old enough to remember when liberals were trying to phase out coal, get rid of the jobs, get rid of the industry, telling people to learn to code. What a different day it is now.
It is, to go from the yin-yang from Obama, Trump, Biden, back to Trump. The difference is this time around, Trump 2.0 is blowing away any ambition that Trump 1.0 had, particularly in the climate energy realm. We couldn't even fathom in Trump 1.0 what they're accomplishing in just, I can't even remember how many days. What are we at, 70 days now? Something like that, 75 days? This is unbelievable. And the difference between Trump 1.0 and 2.0 when it comes to energy and climate policy is they are looking for a permanence that they were not able to achieve last time because Biden came in and basically undid everything. And they have several things that they're doing. They're going after the endangerment finding of the EPA and also going after the UN Paris Agreement, submitting it for a treaty to the Senate to get it rejected so the next president can't get us back in. But the latest on coal is just phenomenal after years, decades of a war on coal, really beginning in earnest with the Obama administration and then continuing with Biden, all the regulatory agencies, all the state, big blue states going after it. They got it down to 20% of energy from about 50% of energy, at the beginning of the century. So he has a lot of work to do, but this is a great moment in American history because coal is one of the most strategic assets any country has, and the U.S. is the Saudi Arabia of coal.
Yeah, that's a great point. Mark, I want to ask a little bit about the endangerment finding because it really is the holy grail of the climate movement, at least the Obama-era climate movement forward. Taking that on is as big as taking on Roe v. Wade for abortion activists.
Yes.
Where do you think that stands? We had some good reporting here that showed that these new emails that we were able to force out of the EPA show that they made the decision and then they tried to get the science to back it up after the fact. So it wasn't science-driven. How do you think this will fare in the courts?
Well, it could take a while. It could take 1 to 2, 3 years. It took a while the first time around. I was working in the U.S. Senate Environment Public Works Committee when Obama proposed that the Supreme Court ruled that you are able to regulate CO2, which was an insane, ridiculous Supreme Court decision. I think that was 2007, if I'm not mistaken, at this point, when the Supreme Court ruled. But Obama began regulating it as a pollutant under the Clean Air Act, but the Clean Air Act never mentioned carbon dioxide. So there's a lot you have to do. It's the holy grail, first of all, the endangerment finding. It's treating carbon dioxide. Humans inhale oxygen. We exhale carbon dioxide about 2 or 3 pounds per person on average. If you exercise a lot, you could be up to 7 or 8 pounds. There have been studies claiming your breath can act as warming agents. It's completely bonkers to go after carbon dioxide as a pollutant. But essentially, the White House has a tall order to go here. They have to go through a whole, essentially counter the endangerment finding with scientific assessments. They have to go after it. It's going to be immediately lawsuits and challenge in courts and go through the whole court system, a whole bureaucratic system. But the key to remember here is this has to be overturned because this is the basis for solar, wind mandates, gas-powered car bans, all of the Green New Deal, all of even the UN Paris Agreement. Everything is based on this endangerment finding that our unelected bureaucracy has been instilling upon America these many years.
Mark, we talked about the black hole of money that this EPA museum was that EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin shut down. And I know you've talked about how this almost resembled propaganda museums. We heard about this during World War II being spread all over the Axis powers nations. Tell us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, this was right there in Washington, D.C., EPA headquarters. $4 million to build, $600,000 to operate annually, less than 2,000 visitors per year. And I guarantee you there are either EPA staff or maybe some other, Biden staffers. I don't know. The public didn't even know about it. I've talked to longtime people, this $4 million museum, people who even considered for EPA administrator in Trump's first term. They didn't even know this museum existed. And, of course, in the museum, they don't even acknowledge Donald Trump was president either now or back in 2017 to 2021. He isn't mentioned. It's basically a shrine, if you will, to Biden and Obama and the climate agenda. It's a shrine to Al Gore. It is the most propagandized site you could have ever imagined. And, of course, now it's in the dustbin of history, just like the Berlin Wall was in the dustbin of history. But it really did have an eerie, either late Soviet feel or Berlin Wall-esque feel, East German feel, where it was just like the state propaganda made for the few that would go and enjoy it and at a huge taxpayer expense.
Yeah, really remarkable. Mark, we got about a minute left. There are more and more scientists coming out now, almost as whistleblowers, saying, hey, the science was hijacked, and this a lot of times the policy was running ahead of the science. That has changed other major things in America, like what we know about COVID and the COVID-19 vaccines and things like that. How important is it that more scientific whistleblowers are starting to emerge on the climate debate?
It is incredibly important. In fact, this story is incredible. The New York Times last week had an article that basically was plug and play COVID or climate. whatever you want. Basically, any scientist who dissented during the COVID was smeared, attacked by government agents, by corporate media, all in collusion. The New York Times is now officially admitting this, and they're saying the establishment didn't do such a good job at basically creating a fake consensus. So everything we saw happen in COVID in real time has been happening in climate for decades. So there's major pushback right now. In the
Pretty parallel tracks when it comes to messaging. But you know what? Don't question the science, Mark Morano. Don't question it, Mark. Always a pleasure having you here. Thanks so much for being here. Everybody, that's going to do it for us tonight. I can't believe that hour is done. We're going to be back here tomorrow night. I know it. 6 p.m. Eastern. Grant Stinchfield is going to